J.D. Vance did not yell at Gavin Newsom. He did not call him names. He never raised his voice. He sat across from him and read addresses from a single sheet of paper. Every address belonged to a family that had left California. Newsom carried 60 pages of reasons they should have stayed. He could not get through a single one. Every address told the same story. Newsom had arrived 15 minutes early, alone, marking pages in his binder with a pen that cost more than some people's grocery bill. By the time the cameras turned on, every tab was in place. Every talking point was loaded. What Newsom did not know was that the man at the other end of the table had not come to ask questions. He had come to read names. The chairman opened the hearing. Newsom positioned his microphone, adjusted his water glass, and began his testimony the way he began press conferences. Shoulders back, chin level, voice tuned to the exact frequency that sounds like authority without sounding like effort. He had been performing this version of himself for 20 years, and it still fit like a tailored jacket. California remains the 5th largest economy in the world, he said. Homelessness is declining for the first time. We are not in decline. We are in transition. He used the word transition 3 times before Vance said anything. Vance sat with his hands folded over a single sheet of paper. No binder, no staff passing notes, no water glass. He watched Newsom the way a mechanic watches an engine that sounds fine but pulls slightly to the left. Then he leaned into his microphone. "Governor." The voice was quiet, not aggressive. The voice of a man who had a question and genuinely wanted an answer. "You used the word transition 3 times in your opening. I want to make sure I understand what you mean. Can you tell me what California is transitioning from?" Newsom's smile held. "We are transitioning from a period of unprecedented national disruption, COVID, supply chain collapse, inflationary pressure. California was not immune to those forces, Vice President Vance. No state was. But our response has been to invest aggressively in housing, in infrastructure, in climate. I did not ask about your response. The room got half a degree quieter. I did not ask about COVID. I did not ask about the supply chain. I asked about the 200,000 people who left your state last year." Vance picked up his sheet of paper by one corner. "Where are they transitioning to?" Newsom's smile flickered. His hands went to the binder, straightened it, then returned to the table. Vance read from the sheet. "Nashville, Austin, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Boise, Dallas." He set it down. "Governor, these are not random cities. They have something in common. Why do you think 200,000 people all went to the same kinds of places? That is not a fair characterization of." Newsom caught himself reset. The stumble was small, but the gallery heard it. "The factors driving domestic migration are complex, and frankly, many of them are federal. Housing policy, interest rate decisions, the expansion of remote work. I did not ask about Washington." Vance had not raised his voice once. "I asked about California, the state you govern, the one those people left." A woman in the gallery uncrossed her arms. A staffer behind Newsom looked down at her phone. The room was not hostile yet. It was leaning the way a jury leans before it decides which direction to fall. Vance sat back. His voice dropped, and for a moment he sounded less like a vice president and more like a man at a kitchen table who had just heard something that made no sense to him. "Governor, I am not trying to embarrass you. I am trying to understand where I grew up. If you had the best house on the block and people still moved out of the neighborhood, you did not blame the neighbors. You checked the house." He folded his hands. "You have the coastline, you have the weather, you have Silicon Valley, and folks are running from it. That is not a political argument. That is a riddle." Newsom opened his mouth, closed it, then opened the binder to a page he had not marked. Here is what Newsom was doing. He was renaming things the way you rename an overdue bill as a flexible payment arrangement. The number does not change, but it buys you a day. Vance had not come for the names. He had come for the numbers, and Newsom had brought them all, 60 pages. Newsom shifted forward. His posture changed. The rehearsed calm was gone, and something sharper took its place. He opened the binder with both hands and began turning pages the way a lawyer turns pages when he knows the jury is still reachable. "Let me be specific," he said. "Since I took office, California has invested $37 billion in homelessness programs, Project Roomkey, Clean California, executive orders expanding housing development in every metro, mental health treatment, addiction services, transitional housing." He looked up from the binder. "These are not talking points, Mr. Vice President. These are line items. They have receipts." Every page he turned was a shield. Every number he read was a wall. And for 30 seconds it worked. The room watched a governor who had done his homework, and even the people who did not like him had to admit the binder was full. Vance waited until Newsom's hand stopped moving. Then he nodded slowly, the way you nod when someone has just handed you exactly what you needed. Governor, you just listed programs that cost $37 billion. Homelessness in California went up 24% during the period you spent that money. You started your term with a $100 billion surplus. You are now looking at a $60 billion deficit. He let the math sit for a moment. My grandmother raised me, Governor. She worked doubles at a nursing home in Middletown, Ohio, never made more than $30,000 a year in her life. And she used to say, if you pay good money and the problem gets worse, the money is not the problem. You are, he leaned forward. $37 billion. What did you get for it? Newsom's chin rose. These things take time, Senator, he said. Senators. Vance had not been a senator for 2 years. These are generational problems that require sustained investment. You do not reverse a housing crisis in one budget cycle. You do not solve homelessness with one program. The trajectory. Respectfully, Governor, I did not ask about trajectory. I asked about results. Vance's voice was still level, still calm, almost kind, which made it worse. You spent $37 billion. Homelessness went up. The budget went from surplus to deficit. And you are telling me you need more time. He leaned forward. Governor, if I hired a contractor and he spent $37 billion on my kitchen and the sink still did not work, I would not give him more time. I would change the locks. A sound moved through the gallery, not laughter, closer to recognition, the kind of sound people make when someone says the thing they have been thinking but could not find the words for. Vance was not smiling. His voice changed, slower, lower, the way a man's voice changes when he stops making an argument and starts telling the truth. I want to talk about a family in Bakersfield right now. Both parents work. They leave the house before the sun comes up. They come home after dark. Their rent is $4,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment that was $2,000 5 years ago. Their kids walk past 3 encampments on the way to a school that just lost its art program to budget cuts. They have not been to the dentist in 2 years, not because they are lazy, because they are choosing between the dentist and the electric bill. The gallery was still. A cameraman adjusted his angle toward Vance and did not move it back. And every time that family turns on the television, they see you, Governor, standing behind a podium in a suit that costs more than their rent, telling them that California is a model for the nation. He let that sit. That family does not need another program? Governor, they do not need another executive order. They do not need another page in your binder. They need a governor who sees them. Newsom's binder was still open. His hands had stopped turning pages. His eyes moved across the room, looking for the nods that had been there 20 minutes ago. They were not there anymore. There is a kind of politician who becomes most dangerous when the numbers stop working. That is when they stop defending the policy and start attacking the person. Newsom had one move left, and it was not in the binder. Vance straightened his sheet of paper. Governor, I want to explain why this is personal for me. I grew up in... Newsom's voice cut across the room like a door closing. Vance stopped mid-sentence. His mouth was still open. I know, Mr. Vice President. I have read your book. Newsom leaned into his microphone. His voice had dropped the rapid-fire statistics. It was slower now, more controlled, more dangerous. You grew up poor. Your mother struggled with addiction. Your grandmother raised you. You joined the Marines. You went to Ohio State, then to Yale Law School. It is by any measure a remarkable American story. He paused, not for applause, for aim. But you did not stay in Ohio, did you? After Yale, you went to San Francisco. You worked in Silicon Valley. You made your money in venture capital, in the state of California. His eyes did not leave Vance. California gave you the network. California gave you the investors. California gave you the career that put you in this chair. So you took everything this state had to offer, and now you sit across from me and tell me it is broken. The gallery murmured. Heads turned. A few nods toward Newsom. Not many, but enough. The current in the room reversed, and for the first time in the hearing, the energy moved toward the witness table and away from the questioner. For 30 seconds, the room belonged to Newsom. He pressed it. People move, Vice President Vance. That is what people do in a free country. You moved. Millions of people move every year. 1.7 million is a number. It is not a national tragedy. He called 1.7 million people a number. Vance sat still. His hands were on the table. His sheet of paper was under his right palm. For a moment he looked like a man who had been hit cleanly and needed a second to find his footing. Then he spoke. "You are right about one thing, Governor." His voice was quiet, not defeated, recalibrated. "California gave me a chance. It gave me a career and a life that I could not have had in Middletown, Ohio. I know that. I have never denied it." He leaned forward, "And that is exactly why I am sitting here. Not because I hate California, because I owe it. And the California that gave me that chance does not exist anymore. Not for the family in Bakersfield, not for the teacher in Fresno, not for the firefighter in Los Angeles who cannot afford to live in the city he protects." He had taken Newsom's best punch and turned it into his own argument. The gallery heard it. The shift was not instant. It was the slow turn of a weather vane after the wind changes. "Let me tell you about one evening, Governor. November 6th, 2020. You sat at the French Laundry restaurant in Napa Valley, $350 a plate, no mask, 12 guests, wine, candles, lobbyists. Newsom's jaw set. His hands moved from the microphone to the table, flat, not touching the binder. And on that same day, you had just issued a ban on indoor dining for 94% of California. Families could not eat in a restaurant. Small businesses were closing by the hundreds. Children were locked out of their own schools. And you were sitting at a table that cost more than some of those families spend on groceries in a month. Vance's voice did not rise. It dropped. "I do not hold that against you as a human being. People make mistakes. People have bad nights. I understand that. But here is what I hold against you, Governor. You never understood why it was wrong. You thought the problem was that someone took a photograph. The problem was that while you were choosing wine, the people you govern were choosing between the mortgage and the medicine cabinet." Newsom's breathing was visible now, not fast, controlled. The kind of breathing a person does when they are choosing very carefully what to say next and what to leave unsaid. "You are a talented man, Governor." Vance's voice shifted again, softer, almost sad. "You speak well. You present well. You work hard. I believe you are helping. I do not think you wake up in the morning trying to fail." He let that land. "But somewhere along the way, the distance between your life and theirs became so wide that you stopped being able to see across it. Not because you are cruel, because you are comfortable. And those are not the same thing. But in a governor, the result is the same." Newsom sat back. The binder was in front of him, untouched. His hands rested on the table on either side of it, as if the binder were something that belonged to someone else. This was never about two men. This was about whether the people who run things are required to live in the world they built. Vance was not finished, but he was close, and he still had one sheet of paper. Newsom straightened. Whatever had broken in him during the French Laundry exchange, he patched the way he patched everything, with language. "Vice President Vance, let me be honest with you. This hearing is not about governance. This is about politics. California is a target because we lead on the issues that make the rest of the country uncomfortable. Climate, immigration, equity. We do the hard things. And every election cycle, someone from a state with half our GDP and a fraction of our complexity sits in that chair and tells us we are failing." He was not wrong about the complexity. 40 million people. The fifth largest economy in the world, wildfires, earthquakes, droughts, a border, a coastline, and a tech industry that could fund a small country. Governing California is not a job for someone who folds under pressure. And whatever else Newsom was, he was not a man who folded, but Vance did not take the bait. "Governor, Tesla left your state. In-N-Out Burger left your state. Chevron left your state. 1.7 million people left your state." He counted them on his fingers. Not for theater, for arithmetic. "Did they all leave because of your values?" Newsom shifted. "Net migration is more complex than a headline, Mr. Vice President. California continues to attract more international immigration than any state in the country. Our population, so your answer is that the people who grew up in California, who built California, who paid taxes in California for 20 and 30 years left, and you replaced them, and you are calling that a success." The word "replaced" landed in the room the way a bill lands on a doormat. Quiet, heavy, impossible to ignore. "You said something earlier that I wrote down." Vance picked up his sheet and turned it over. On the back, in his handwriting, a single sentence. "You said people move. That is what people do in a free country." Let me tell you about the people who moved. He turned the sheet back over, the side with addresses. This address was a teacher in Fresno, 22 years in the same school district, 3rd grade. She knew every family on her block by name. She moved to Boise last March because her rent went up $1,100 in 2 years and her salary went up 0. He moved his finger down the page. This one was a firefighter. Vance looked up from the paper, 14 years. Responded to the Woolsey fire, the Palisades fire. He set the paper down for a moment. He moved to Phoenix because he could not afford to live in the city he was risking his life to protect. One more. This address was a small business owner in San Diego. Auto repair, 3 generations. His grandfather started the shop. His father ran it for 30 years. He closed it in September and moved his family to Dallas. Not because business was bad, because between taxes, insurance, permits, and regulations, the math stopped working. The shop was profitable. The state was not. Each address landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. No splash, just rings moving outward. Newsom's hand moved toward the binder. It stopped halfway. His fingers hovered over the cover for a moment, then settled beside it. He did not open it. Those are, he cleared his throat. Those numbers are not the full picture. Numbers. He called the teacher and the firefighter and the family who closed their grandfather's shop numbers. Vance set his sheet down face up. They did not leave because of the weather, Governor. The weather is the reason people used to come. They did not leave because of politics. Most of them did not care about politics until politics started caring about their paycheck. They left because they could not afford to stay in the state you run. And you know that. You have always known that. Newsom looked at Vance, and for the first time in the hearing, he did not look like a governor preparing an answer. He looked like a man who had run out of pages. Vice President Vance. His voice was different, stripped. The polish was gone. I have made mistakes. I have said that publicly. But I have been in rooms you have never been in, making decisions that no one in this chamber has ever had to make. Governing 40 million people is not a hearing. It is not a sheet of paper. It is the hardest thing I have ever done, and I have done it every single day for 7 years. For a moment, nobody in the room breathed. He was not wrong. Governing is hard. The hours are real. The pressure is real. The rooms he described are real. And for 3 seconds, the gallery sat with that, a flicker of something that was not sympathy but was close to it, the recognition that the man at the witness table was still a man. Vance nodded once, not dismissive, not sarcastic. The nod of a man who heard what was said and did not need to pretend he did not. Then he looked down at the sheet of paper. The addresses were still there. Every one of them. You want to know the story every one of those addresses has in common? The room went still. He is the man who polished the doorknob while the house burned down. The gallery did not move. Nobody in that room moved. Not because they were surprised, because they had been waiting a very long time. Not for those exact words, but for that exact feeling. California used to be where the roads ended because nobody wanted to go any further. Route 66 did not stop at the Pacific because the highway ran out of asphalt. It stopped because the people driving it ran out of reasons to keep going. They had found it, the last best place, the end of the American road, and the beginning of whatever came next. For 100 years, California was the answer to the question every other state was still asking. And in the span of one governorship, the traffic reversed. The same highways that carried grandparents west are now carrying their grandchildren east. Not toward something, away from something, away from $4,000 rent and $12 gas and sidewalks that smell like something no one in City Hall will name. Away from schools that cut art programs to fund consultants. Away from a state that spends $37 billion on homelessness and has more homeless people than when it started. The people who are watching this do not need anyone to explain what went wrong. They know. They have known longer than any senator or vice president or cable news anchor. They knew it when the grocery bill started climbing and the paycheck did not. They knew it when the gas station hit $80 and the governor was talking about electric vehicles that cost more than their car and their savings combined. They knew it when the tent appeared on the sidewalk outside the pharmacy and no one removed it for 6 months. Gavin Newsom is not a bad man. That is not the point. The point is that he is a certain kind of man. The kind who is so good at the performance of governing that he stopped noticing when the governing itself stopped working. The kind who can stand behind a podium and deliver a perfect 30-second answer about housing and then get into a car that drives past 40 tents on the way to dinner, not because he does not see them, because he has a program for them. He always has a program, he just never has a result, and that is not a Gavin Newsom problem. That is a problem with a kind of leadership that has been growing in this country for 30 years. Leadership that measures itself by inputs, billions spent, orders signed, programs launched, press conferences held, never by outputs. Did the rent go down? Did the tent get moved? Did the family stay? Those questions do not have press conferences. They have answers. And the answers for 7 years have all been the same. If you are one of the people who left, you do not need anyone to tell your story. You lived it. You packed the boxes. You sold the house for less than you paid. You explained to your kids why they were changing schools. You do not need a vice president to validate what you already know. And if you are still there, still holding on, still paying the taxes, and stepping over the tents and sitting in the traffic and watching the governor smile on television and tell you that things are getting better. You already know everything, J.D. Vance said in that hearing room. You have known it longer than he has. You have been saying it to your kitchen table for years. Somewhere in Boise tonight, a teacher who spent 22 years in Fresno is unpacking her last box. She tapes a photo of her old classroom to the refrigerator door. The children in the photo are smiling. The bulletin board behind them says, "Welcome back," in yellow letters she cut out by hand. California is still in that photo. It is just not on her driver's license anymore.